was this more true than during the summer of '96 at an aquatic park in Ohio. Fate often takes the form of the most mundane choices. Witness Raymond and Jana Chapman and their extended family. Their decision of which time to take in a boat show and where to sit would forever alter their lives.
We had been to the park before. We hadn't seen this particular boat show. We wanted to go to the previous show, and we'd gone over to the stadium, and the stadium was all filled up, so I went back down and told my wife, I said, nah, I said, we could get in, but it's going to be crowded. I said, why don't we just go ahead and get a sandwich and eat a sandwich, just relax down here for a little bit, and then we'll just go to the next show.
And we had told the girls they could pick out where they wanted to sit because they were hoping they'd get splashed by water. So naturally, we ended up right down in the front. Thought they could get by with.
My son and I, we were just sitting there talking, and I just happened to look out and saw the boat was coming in towards us.
When it was coming in, it looked just like it did all the other times that we've been up there and seen the boat shows, where it's coming into shore and then turn and go back out. But this time it didn't turn.
The last thing I remember, the boat was like 3 feet from me, and it was coming right at my head. And I knew that, that I was not going to get away from it, that it was going to hit me.
All of a sudden, I realized that the boat was on top of me. And I felt something under me, and it was Ray. And while I was laying under there, all I could think of was, what's happened to my family? Where are they all?
The person who was sitting directly across the aisle from me, it hit him towards the side of the head or the face, and I had about enough time to push my nieces out of the way, and about that time it hit me on the side of the head.
My son had been knocked out, and when he came to, he realized we were under it, and he started rocking it, trying to get it off. As they lifted the boat, I can remember looking up and saw my mother, and she had been pinned to the seat with the boat on her. And when they lifted the boat, the terror in her eyes is something I'll never forget.
First thing I remember was that boat being lifted, and some guy, even before it was lifted very much, he grabbed me.
He just came down and picked her up and carried her up 2 rows so that she wouldn't be near the boat if it came back down.
A bunch of people come with things to put on my arms to try to keep the blood from coming, because it was just flowing like a fountain, it was just coming from my shoulders clear down. That man that was helping me, the blood dripped on him, and I hated it because he was just there for a good time like I was. And for him to be put through something like that, I kept apologizing to him that I was sorry, but he said it was all right. But you think of those I don't know why you think of them, but you think of strange things when something terrible happens.
They came and put me on a board, put me in a neck brace, and my daughter came over, and I said, "Where's your mother at?" And she turned her head and looked at one of the MTs. She said, "Haven't you told him yet?" And at that point, my heart just dropped to the bottom, because I thought that she had died. And then like an hour later, they told me that my wife was in Metro Hospital. They probably were going to have to operate on her, but she was alive. And when they told me that, I just said, "Thank you, Lord."
I'm not sure if there's a whole lot I would have done differently. Yeah, certain things might have changed the fact that you weren't there at the time it happened. But the way I look at it, we were there. I'm just glad it came out all for the best.
I've had thoughts like that. It's kind of like, why did this have to happen to us? Why couldn't it have happened 5 rows down, 5 rows over? Yeah, it's crossed my mind why it had to happen. But then it's crossed my mind too, why would it have to happen to anyone?
You kind of take each other just for granted that you're always going to be there. And now I guess I look at each day and think, maybe I won't have him tomorrow, so I better appreciate him today. We are closer. The whole family seems to be. There's more phone calls, there's more time spent together than there had been. We've always been a close family, but when everybody has their own directions to go and own jobs, and you don't have a lot of time, but now it seems like everybody takes just a couple more minutes to make sure that everything's okay.
Coming up, a bungee cord snaps. A man plummets 2,000 feet with a collapsed parachute, and a bomb technician faces his worst nightmare. Tortoises have their shells. A porcupine has its quills. An elephant has its size and thick skin, but man has comparatively little in the way of bodily defenses. Yet people continue to surprise with their physical resiliency. Case in point, David McCallum.
First one was when I was the youngest. My grandpa pulled me out of a river. I was floating face down. They didn't know where I was for a few minutes, and finally somebody seen me, and my grandpa jumped in and grabbed me and brought me back, I guess. That was the first time. And then after that in school, I fell off the bleachers, landed on my head. And I've had quite a few car accidents and stuff like that.
In 1992, David, his wife Kathy, and their 2 children took an outing to the Genesee County Expo. They spent the day there, going on rides and visiting the petting zoo. But only one attraction preoccupied David: bungee jumping.
You hear a lot of people talking, I'd never do it, I'd never do it. You know, you're standing there and you're watching just the surrounding people. You know, it's like, well, these people don't have any guts, these people do. And, you know, there's young girls doing it. And I thought, well, I'm gonna do it. You know, I show them I'm there. And I showed them.
Our anniversary was coming up, and I thought, oh gosh, you know, I thought, well, this is what you want, then that is going to be your gift. I'm not going to buy anything else.
Yeah, we're live. He's all wants to the top. Dave's gonna jump.
You have so much adrenaline as you're going up in this cage. And matter of fact, I told the guy, he says, you might have to push me. And he said, well, it wouldn't be the first time.
Any last words?
I could just tell by the looks in his face that he was, you know, very nervous. And the kids were shouting, Daddy, Daddy, and I just know he was really excited. My heart was just pounding, and I just knew his was pounding.
What they tell you to do is you put your toes on the edge of the cage and put your hands up. And when he says 3, 2, 1 bungee, you go ahead and you just fall forward.
I just was watching him. Next thing you know, he was gone, and the string was just hanging there.
My lower half hit the bag. My legs kind of come back behind me, and I speared the bag is what I did, and I guess I speared the ground with my legs, and the one shattered. And I never looked down to see it, but for what I'm told is my leg looked like an S, the shape of it. My foot was twisted around, and bones were sticking out.
I just screamed. I ran around into the gate, ran in there, and as I got closer to him, he shouted, "Get Kathy away from here, get her back." So I knew something was wrong. But I really thought he was dead at the time. I thought we weren't going to find him alive.
When I was laying there for a second, I thought, you know, I'm not dead, I'm not dead. I was thinking this to myself. But then when we got in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, that's when the pain started, and I was trying to play it off to where I was cool, you know, and just play it off. And I told the paramedic, I says, well, you know the saying where your mom tells you to always put clean underwear on in case you have an accident, and that's luckily I put clean underwear on. I shattered my ankle, shattered my leg. They put a plate, 7 pins back in it. Then after the accident, I was off work for a 1.5 years. The bills were adding up, and no money and no insurance, and it put a burden on the marriage.
it did put a lot of stress on the whole relationship, and the children were really, you know, frightened by what had happened. They didn't understand a lot of it, so it was hard on us.
David and Kathy were divorced a year after the accident. Now David is not able to see his children as often as he used to, but this has not kept his son from following in his father's footsteps.
My son Corey, he's riding a motorcycle by himself now. He rides a snowmobile, and hopefully for Christmas I think he's going to get a goat cart. But he's already had his first set of stitches in his forehead, and I think he's going to have a few more.
Despite our physical frailty, people continue to take the most extreme risks just for the sake of the thrill. Meet Eric Johnson, skydiver.
I first started thinking about skydiving, actually I was about 8 years old, and we were at an air show, and they had the Golden Knights, the Army parachute team was there, and it just blew me away as a little kid, you know, watching this. And then when they landed, one of the guys, he let me help him pack his parachute and everything. I told my mom right then I was going to skydive someday.
Eric had over 500 jumps behind him when, on that fateful day, he and his friend Troy decided it was time to capture the rush on video.
You're flying. You're physically flying. There's nothing like it. It is the funnest thing I've ever done.
Your head down, going straight down, then your head up, you're sitting, you're turning around, you're flipping over.
Whenever you're falling in a full stand-up position like this, you're going like 300 miles an hour. It's like the length of a football field every second. It's like football field. And it's exhilarating.
We got caught up in the skydive, and I found myself upside down at 2,000 feet and said, well, I'm out of here, and just deployed. You're supposed to be open by 2,000 feet. At that fall rate, you know, you got 10 seconds to impact the ground, so you got to start doing something.
That's, I mean, I don't want to say panic time, but it's time to get open. Because basically, if that main doesn't work, you got very little time to deal with it. So I flipped over and went to pull. I dumped the main, and it opened fine.
But suddenly, Eric became aware that he had made a potentially deadly mistake. He had waited too long to release his main chute, and now the low altitude, combined with a high rate of speed, automatically triggered his backup chute. As a result, neither chute could deploy at a proper angle to slow him down enough for a safe landing.
I was just thinking, oh my God, he's got a double malfunction. You know, that's what you don't want. You have a second parachute so that it saves you in case your first parachute doesn't work. And whenever you see somebody get wrapped up like that, it's not a pretty sight.
Eric was now in a precarious position. With two chutes out, he made the fateful decision to cut away his main canopy and ride in on the reserve.
So I went ahead and reached over, cut it away. And right as I did it, I thought, man, I hope this thing doesn't get hung up in that reserve. And when I released the main canopy, the risers went away, and the reserve just hooked the left riser of my main canopy and wrapped it up in there and knotted it. And I'm looking up at it going, I can't believe it happened. You know, you're just like, 2 seconds ago, I was thinking, man, I hope that doesn't happen. And you're sitting there and you're like,
On the ground, there was a lot of tension, a lot of worry. Watching somebody coming to the ground at 50 or 60 miles an hour is just not a good sight, you know what I mean?
I immediately unstowed the toggles and started pumping them, trying to pull down on them and pump them and hope that that thing will clear. And I pumped them, and like one side of the canopy inflated. Then it started a violent spin one way, so I pulled the other one to try and counter. Then it collapsed again, and it would seem like everything I did, some things would get it to where it would inflate a little bit and start supporting me. And the next thing you know, you're feeling no pressure on your toggles. You're heading towards the earth again at a high rate of speed.
He just started spinning around and spinning and spinning and spinning real fast, and I was like, oh my, whoa. And I thought, well, I don't even want to tell you what I thought he was dead.
Just a million things are going through your mind, and I remember the first thing I thought was, you know, there's no way I'm going to survive this. This is not a survivable scenario. There's no time during the incident that I think I was going to survive. And then I'm thinking, I can't believe this is happening to me, man. This is my last jump. And you know, when you smoke and joke with your friends, you're like, man, I would never want to sit in the hospital and die of cancer. And be in a life support machine for 2 weeks, you know, or, you know, be incapacitated for 10 years and die slow. I'd much rather just burn in at 200 miles an hour. And you'll hear a lot of skydivers say that. But let me tell you what, when I was up there, I was like, man, I'll take the cancer any day. Because I'm like, you got a few seconds left, and you can't make amends, you can't do anything. It was only just a few seconds, seemed like a long time in the air. I made like 4 complete rotations. I saw power lines, I saw a house, I saw a tree, I saw a road. And I'm like, man, this is gonna hurt real bad, or it's not gonna hurt at all. And when it kicked me on the last spin, it whipped me right over this bean field, right on the edge of it, a little bit of plowed up ground, and it laid me out completely on one side, so I was gonna land on this side. I didn't want this arm dangling out there, so I kind of tucked it up so it wouldn't get broken off, and I hit completely on the right side, all as a unit. Boom. And you get like a weird, I don't know if you've ever been popped in the nose by anybody, you get kind of a weird smell in your nose after hitting. I got that, and I kind of laid there for just a second, and I'm like, man, I'm alive. And not only am I alive, I'm not even hurt. So then I get up and I start screaming, thank God! Thank God! And, you know, I'm just freaking out, you know, screaming. I can't describe the feeling, man, because 1 minute you think you're going to die, and that is the most depressing, helpless feeling you could ever have. And in the next minute, you're fine. And, you know, now you're one bad dude because, you know, you saw the Grim Reaper and you beat him.
Yeah! And I go over there, and he's just screaming. He's like, oh, my God, I can't believe it. And I gave him a hug. I was like, man, I'm so glad you're not dead. You know what I mean?
I don't think there's anybody that would live through that. I really don't. That's the worst thing I've ever seen in skydiving.
Get the f*** off of me! I'm not gonna stop skydiving. I'm doing it for 3 years, hardcore every weekend, and if I survive the incident, I'm gonna keep jumping. There's no way I'll ever stop. If I don't jump once a week, I get like clinically depressed. You know, I mean, it's like seeing the sun for some people. They gotta be around the sun. Well, I gotta be around skydiving.
Coming up, a driverless school bus hurtles out of control. A bomb expert stares death in the face, and a teenager is engulfed in flames that will not be extinguished. Tons and tons of steel, each massive hunk only feet apart, and hurtling at speeds over 65 miles per hour. Every day we subject ourselves to this danger, assuming we are perfectly safe. Still, each morning we send our kids off in buses, putting complete and often blind faith in the hands of strangers. But parents whose kids took bus number 13 of the Knox, Indiana school district know better. They and their children will never forget the day a substitute driver was at the wheel.
I was thinking it would be just a regular day. Like most days, we get on the bus and go home. The ride takes about 45 minutes, not even that. I was talking to all my friends and didn't think anything was gonna happen.
I remember it was kind of cloudy that day. I was kind of thinking what I was going to do that summer because it was getting towards summertime now. I was thinking about how I'd probably get my license and stuff and probably go just get a car and stuff and have fun, you know.
When he passed the first road, I thought he just missed the road because that's what substitute drivers usually do.
He keeps on going straight. And I was wondering, and I thought it was just maybe something he was planning on doing.
I was like, guys, he knows what he's doing, you know, he's okay. I figured he'd just go to the next turn. I noticed we started picking up speed quite a bit.
And I was scared, and he just keeps on going straight. He looked like he was staring into space or something at the mirror and the road at the same time.
I kind of thought maybe he was drunk or something. That's what I thought, but...
Once we passed the next street, that's when I thought, no, there's something wrong. And then my friend Jenna, she goes, hey, John, you should go up and see what's wrong. At first I kind of hesitated because if I go up there and everything's okay, I can get in trouble. Then I went ahead and got up, went up to the front of the bus and knelt down and asked the driver if he was okay. And at this point, I felt kind of panicky. I looked up again, and we were coming up towards another street, and we weren't turning. Well, by this point, I know we're in trouble. Something's definitely wrong.
I was kind of actually laughing the whole way because I thought I didn't know what was going on, but when we got on the bridge, I kind of stopped laughing.
I heard a crash, and it was a bridge. Then when we were bumping up and down, that really scared me.
Death was going through my mind.
The wheels of the bus on the right side were off the bridge, and then there's a cement block, and the front tire hit that, set that part of the bus into the air, and the back of the bus hit it, and there's a video of it from the front of the bus that shows a little kid flying in the air.
It was kind of weird because I didn't know I was going to fly up. I thought I'd just go boink. When I flew up, I didn't feel it hit the ceiling. But when I came down on the seat, I bit my tongue and went like that, and I felt myself getting jerked back, and I fell, and then my tongue was bleeding, and I felt the pain.
I was hoping that maybe the landing would jar from whatever was wrong, but it didn't, and so I knew I had to do something. So I looked down, I saw his foot on the gas. Well, if I pull his foot off the gas, it's got to stop. So I pulled off his foot off the gas, and then I pressed the brake with my other hand. And then the bus came to a stop. I got up and then looked around. It kind of broke my heart because this one kid, he goes, "My jaw hurts." And another one was like, "Why did this happen to us, you know?" And I didn't know how many of these kids were hurt. At this point, I was very scared because I was like, this kid's got blood coming out of his mouth, and that's not a good sign. So I turned around and saw the radio, and I was like, well, I call on the radio and get the help.
Thanks to John's actions, all injuries sustained were minor. The bus driver had been struck with a seizure, something he was prone to, but did not disclose on his job application.
We were sort of lucky compared to other people in bus accidents who die. I was so worried, scared, upset. I wouldn't know what to do, and I thank John very much for saving us.
I consider him a hero.
Stuff like this doesn't happen to people like me. This is supposed to happen to the all-star athlete, football player guy, quarterback, who's always takes command of things, you know. I've never been one to take command of anything, and at least I don't think I have.
Coming up, a bomb blast that should have meant certain death. A downed helicopter becomes a ticking time bomb, and an amateur stunt that goes horribly wrong. Going to work every day is not as routine for some as it is for others. For those who put their lives on the line for public safety, any day could be their last. And no job is more lethal than that of a bomb technician on a metropolitan police force. The job is so deadly that a special robot has been developed to do the most dangerous tasks. But in August 1986, no such contraption existed. And when a pipe bomb was found in front of the Arab Anti-Discrimination League offices in Boston, Randy Lamatina came face to face with what should have been certain death.
The original call came in at 6:30 in the morning. I arrived there within 15 minutes. By the time I arrived, they already had patrol units on scene. They already had conducted an evacuation. It was a rather large bundle wrapped in duct tape. It had a timer on the outside of it. It had what I believe to be another switch on the bottom of it. The only thing going through my mind at that time was, are there any other switches that I can't see? We carefully attached the lines from the transport container out onto the device and automatically brought the device down the 3 stairs, down the walkway, and up into the container. And that container is a directed blast vehicle. If the device goes off, the blast and the shrapnel would go out, penetrate the container, not hurt any personnel or citizens, and that blast would be directed straight up into the atmosphere.
At the time of the incident, the train of thought was if a pipe bomb has been found and you remotely remove it and it's been bounced around and hit and slammed, and then they put it into the bomb cart and moved it to the West Roxbury dump, and it was a bumpy road, and it didn't go off, then 90% chance that it wasn't going to go off.
The bomb squad reached the detonation site without incident. Things were going smoothly, but unfortunately, the dark hand of fate soon intervened. Complications had arisen.
It was caught on a piece of the netting, and it wouldn't come out from the rope that was attached to it. So somebody had to get up and reach in and take it out of that net.
The attitude's the responsibility, and you know you're the one, if it comes to a device, you're going to be the person to handle it, because there's only 1 or 2 people in the city that are going to be able to handle a bomb.
I couldn't very well say to somebody else, you go up now, you take it out, because there's an unwritten law on the bomb squad. If it's your call, your device, you see it through. My biggest fear was that if we did have a detonation, there were air pockets in the suit, on the shield, that the blast pressure would have gone up and got trapped underneath my helmet and would have basically taken my head off my shoulders. If I had had the helmet on, from what I've been told, I would not be here today.
So whenever Howie touched it, the wire made contact, completed the circuit, and the device went off.
I saw a small red flash in the bottom of the barrel. And that is basically the last thing I remember about that. I was semi-conscious. I could smell flesh burning. And I remember I took my tongue and I put it up by my teeth, and I realized I didn't have any. I looked at my hand and I was missing 3 fingers. And basically it was all a bloody pulp. And I looked up and the paramedic was leaning over, and it was strange because I remember saying to him, am I gonna make it?
I know, Randy. Stay with us.
And maybe it didn't come out right, or maybe it didn't sound right because I didn't have any teeth. My face was fairly well cut up. But I remember him saying to me, I don't know, Randy, it looks pretty bad. And then I went unconscious again, and as I was going unconscious, I said, boy, at least in the movies they tell you, don't worry about it, it's gonna be fine. When I hit the ground, they actually restarted my vital signs with the pedals. And then sometime during the 18 hours of the initial operation, my heart had stopped again. I used to look skeptically at people that said, hey, I saw a light and I saw a tunnel. At some time shortly after the accident, I walked up an incline, and at the end of that incline was the brightest light that I've ever seen. And my grandmother standing there, whom I love very, very much. And there was nothing to fear. It was the most serene, peaceful feeling I have ever felt in my entire life. I don't want to die tomorrow, but I really don't have that fear of dying. I was just glad I was going up on an incline instead of down.
Randy's injuries were severe, requiring massive plastic surgery to his face and reconstruction of the 3 fingers which he lost.
The injuries were severe enough that I had to retire from the police department, and that's probably the greatest injury I suffered.
Coming up, a heroic feat that can only be described as a miracle, and a young man who becomes a human torch. Man assumes his right to defy gravity. Still, every day, our faith in flight is put to the test. But out of these catastrophes, heroes are often born. Witness Vietnam vets Stephen Cucks and Warren Tiny Amaral, who were just putting in another day on the job, moving equipment for a Hawaiian power company.
I had actually arrived a little bit earlier, and they weren't ready to start the work.
So I shut down the helicopter, and Tiny and I were talking, and it's the first time I'd realized that we both had been in Vietnam at the same time.
As a river patrol boat captain, Tiny would rely on chopper pilots like Steve to provide air cover during his missions.
You know, he was stationed only a few miles from me, and they did cover fire for us, and probably he did it over my boat. Probably saved my butt quite a few times. We just was talking that prior to the accident, how we're so lucky that we got home. You know, better than our friends who didn't make it on. So we had a lot to live for.
Work was progressing normally. Tiny and his co-worker, Henry Ahi, were on the ground when suddenly Steve's helicopter showed signs of mechanical malfunction. Immediately, it was decided to make an emergency landing.
One of my major concerns when I came into land was to land close enough to be able to get help, and yet far enough away to where if something were to happen, that if parts and pieces started flying, then nobody on the ground was put in any position of danger.
About a foot off the ground, everything looked stable, so I was walking to him. The bird just veered up and flipped over right into the canal.
There was no kind of noise, there was no indication that something was going on. It was very sudden and very violent, and then blackout.
Well, I know I was shouting, get down, you know, because I saw debris and things flying all over the place. And I thought I was going to see Steve up in pieces or something, you know. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew he was in trouble.
When the incident happened, it brought back flashbacks, and it was all just like reaction. It just like was back in Vietnam. The feeling was that way. That's how I felt. The only thing I remember, get in there, save your buddy, and get the heck out. It was just like a fire zone.
When Tiny and Henry reached the twisted wreckage, they found Steve trapped, unconscious, his head underwater.
We wanted to get him as fast as possible out of the chopper because there was fuel in the water from the bird, and they had the startup alarm that you hear everything before the chopper starts, the alarm ticking.
The alarm was a clear indication that the chopper's ignition switch could spark at any moment, causing the spilling fuel to erupt into a deadly fireball. But when trying to extricate Steve from the cockpit, Tiny and Henry found that a quick escape would be impossible.
Roy and I tried to pick him up out of the cockpit, but it seems like he was stuck somehow. That's when we realized that his leg was stuck under the helicopter.
You know, everybody said that what we did was miraculous. I said, no. I would have done it for anybody. But like Steve and I, like I said, when you're a vet, there's something special between vets. We went through a lot. And to see your friend that close to die, after all what hell he went through in Vietnam, no, I wasn't going to let my friend die. Not that way. That's not the way to go.
Incredibly, knowing he had no other recourse, Tiny lifted the 1.5-ton chopper.
You have enough strength. I guess the adrenaline going through your body. You really don't know the strength you have. And I picked the bird up, yeah. Enough to get his feet. But like I tell everybody, you know, I probably can never do that again. The man upstairs helped us, and I always put that in his hands. He gave me the strength to lift that chopper up to save my friend, and that was the main thing to me, save my friend. Nothing else. That's when we seen his arm. And it was this severed right off. It's like somebody took a butcher knife and just cut his whole arm up and just let it hang there.
His bone was broken completely, and he was hanging just by skin tissue and muscles. And his arm was folded all the way back in a very unnatural position. When I got him on shore, he gained consciousness. Well, he was coming in and out, and I was kind of talking to him to calm him down.
The first thing we do is to try to freeze the arm, try to stop the bleeding. So we set him up. I took off my shirt, wrapped it around him. We put ice from the coolers and wrapped up his arm.
Steve was in shock and losing blood fast. All Tiny could do was keep Steve covered and constantly talk to him so that he would not slip into a coma.
The ambulance is coming. Don't worry about that. Everything's okay, my man.
The first thing that I remembered, I woke up, looked up, and the medical corpsman was leaning over me. And I remember saying, well, this is all a dream, right? I'm going to wake up and this didn't really happen. And he said, no, this isn't a dream. And I said, well, you know, something that's funny about this is my arm really hurts. And he said something to the effect about, well, do you usually feel pain in a dream? And I kind of drifted out thinking, no.
What day is it today? What day is it today? Sir? I'm sorry? You don't know. Okay, is it morning or night? Okay. What's your name? You don't know. Come on. Tell me your name. Very important.
Come on, Steve. Steve, yours is us, Steve. Come on, Steve. You know who I am, Steve? Tiny. Come on, Steve. Okay. You don't realize what you did until after the whole incident is over. So, you know, this thing could have exploded at any time. As soon as you realize what happened, all your emotions kick in. I mean, even as men, you cry. Because I think the good Lord gave me something that day. He saved my friend, he protected us, and it really opened my mind.
I think of myself as a very fortunate person, and the people that I have to thank were the people who did not hesitate. Henry and Tiny just jumped right into the water and saved my life. Tiny tried to lift up the helicopter, which is a feat that's physically impossible to do, and he did it. So for that, I am very, very thankful.
Coming up, the terrifying consequences of playing with fire.
This next segment involves life-threatening misuse of flammable and explosive materials. Do not, under any circumstances, try this at home.
With video cameras in almost every American household, more and more kids dream of being the next Hollywood player. But these youths don't have the expertise of seasoned professionals. And the results are sometimes more horrific than amateur movie making. Take, for example, director, writer, actor Reggie Radcliffe and his never-completed production, Borrowed.
I get great pleasure from killing people.
I was going to play the part of some guy who lended money to his brother, a large amount, like $60,000 or something in that range. And he took off and just took off with my money, never paid me back. So I was going on a rampage looking for him, killing people to get my money back. Your basic, you know, action movie.
Just lech.
I'll never tell you. Never. You have to kill me first.
Okay.
Everything was running smoothly until the climactic fire sequence.
The scene was, he gets out of the car, comes up to my car, says a few things, I push him away from the car, from my car back to the police car, and then I shoot the police car and blow it up. And then he runs away on fire. And that's what I was thinking in my head.
He did ask me if I wanted to do this stunt scene for me to be on fire. He couldn't get anybody else to do it, and I figured, shoot, I'd never been afraid of fire. They had done a separate shot of this car, being on fire. I never saw that. They were just supposed to light me up, and I was supposed to run around and act like I was on fire.
We did it twice. It worked perfect. Went fine. But my camera wasn't working. It wasn't recording anything. So I decided, okay, we'll do it a third time.
Each time, they put more lighter fluid on my leg, and it totally saturated my pants.
And I didn't want to hit him a big ball of fire or anything like that. That was perfect for me. I wanted it just a little higher. So I put too much on him. Way too much.
What you are seeing is an act of sheer ignorance. Unless you wish to suffer massive injury or possibly death, do not attempt anything like this.
When he finally did go up, he went up big. I ran out to him, tried to put him out. I almost had it out. I remember seeing the flame, and he turned away from me. And then it went up his whole side, and I ran out of fire extinguisher.
One once I realized that they weren't going to be able to get me out with the fire extinguisher, I couldn't feel the heat at all. It was just pretty much panic, and my adrenaline just shot up so high that I didn't feel anything. Everybody else started to panic. I remember Reggie running towards the house, and I felt kind of alone at that moment when he took off.
I ran up to get the hose, but I forgot to hook it up. I ran back down, and I'd put out his back with my coat, and I'd move to put out his leg, and his back would catch back on fire. I'd try to put out his back after getting his leg out, and his leg would catch back on fire.
All they were doing was fanning the fire, giving it more oxygen. There was about 10 seconds that I thought, geez, I'm probably gonna die. Finally, my other friend Joe calmed down and just placed the jacket on top of it. And one part went out, he placed the jacket on the other part, and it went out. I stood up real quick, and I didn't feel any pain at all. I didn't think I was hurt.
He stood up, and I thought, wow, everything's great, until he took all his pants off. And we saw what happened.
I saw my leg, and the skin was just hanging off my leg. That was when I realized that there was a pretty big problem.
He went into shock. What probably happened was, when he took off his pants, all the air got to his leg, and then he could feel the pain and feel the burn. It was probably so intense, I don't even think he remembers it. I really don't.
Chuck suffered second and third degree burns and had to undergo months of extremely painful skin grafts.
Looking back on it, I wouldn't have done the fire scene at all. I probably wouldn't have used any firecrackers. You know, it's all dangerous. Let the professionals do it.
I gained more respect for fire. I still don't fear it, but I respect it a lot more.
The opposite of life is death. So life by its very nature is always precarious. Catastrophe lurks everywhere, always a looming potentiality. But in spite of this, humans endure, a remarkable testament to our resiliency. And the triumph is not just in surviving, but in risking one's own life so that others might survive. Death will ultimately come, but it can be delayed. It can be cheated. It happens every day.